Yo, so today we're going to be going over how you can make your own one-shots in Serum and add guitar pedal effects to them, as well as using those one-shots to create more interesting presets in Serum. So for my pedals today, I'm going to be using the Mood and the Blooper. The Mood is a micro looping and delay pedal that has a central clock feature that kind of controls both sides. Each of the sides of the pedals have 3 presets to them that change the functions of the knobs as well as the sound of the effect. The cool thing about the Mood is that the 2 sides work in tandem and kind of bounce off of each other, so you get really interesting and textured effects. In the center of the pedal, we also have a mix or ramp knob that controls the mix of the pedal, and then finally the clock knob, which allows you to slow down the effect. The clock knob is super interesting. You can get super slow and distorted delays that just have a ton of texture to them. The second pedal I'll be using is the Blooper, which is a looping pedal, and again, kind of like the Mood, it has 2 distinct sides, modifier A and modifier B. Each of these modifiers again have 3 effects to them, but the cool thing about the Blooper is that you can update it via the USB-C port on the side. This allows you to change out the effects, and then there is also 6 additional effects that you can download offline and put onto the Blooper. So there's a ton of awesome customization that you can do with that, along with just playing it with different combinations of effects that Chase Bliss offers. The other knobs on the Blooper are stability, which adds wobble or detune, layers, which allows you to switch between recorded layers, your mix or ramp knob, and then finally repeats, which allows you to fade out your layers. And then both of these Chase Bliss pedals also have dip switches on the top side of the pedal. Flipping these on allows you to activate internal modulation, and it also turns the mix knob into a ramp knob to further control that modulation. For our use today, we're going to be mostly using the Mood, as the Blooper is more suited for full melody alteration and layering, but I will cover more of the Blooper in the next video about flipping whole melodies. So now we can get started on the sound design portion in Serum, and in my opinion, the easiest way to get better at sound design is just learn all of the function of the knobs and parameters within Serum, and then just kind of experiment from there. So to start off with, Serum has 4 oscillators, 2 main oscillators, and then a sub and a noise oscillator. Each of the main oscillators has 13 parameters that you can alter. To start off with, you can alter the level and the pan of the sound, a warp knob, which allows you to alter the wavetable that you have selected, a wavetable position knob that allows you to adjust the position of the wavetable, a random phase knob that allows you to randomize the starting position of the sound, a phase knob which allows you to adjust the starting position of the sound. And then for this section, it all deals with unison, and unison is pretty much just like adding voices to your sound. So it's like having multiple things playing on the same note, but each of those voices are slightly detuned to each other, so it sounds super interesting and wide. So for the parameters on this, we have the unison value, which allows you to select the number of voices, the detune knob, which allows you to select the detune of these voices, and then the blend knob, which allows you to blend the voices together. Finally, for the main oscillators, we have the pitch parameters. So we have octave, semitone, fine pitch, and coarse pitch, which just allow you to pitch the sound, detune it, or change the pitch entirely. For the sub oscillator, there's a lot less parameters, so you just have level, pan, and then the octave that it's playing at. And then the noise oscillator has a lot of the same parameters that the main oscillators do, but with the addition of one-shot mode and pitch tracking. One-shot mode basically just allows the sound to not loop, so it only plays once, and then pitch tracking connects it to whatever key is being pressed, so it's in tune and it actually plays that note. Next, we have the envelope, which allows you to shape the way your sound plays. So we have the attack, hold, decay, sustain, and release. And overall, it's pretty simple, and this appears in pretty much every VST you'll see, so it's best to get acquainted with it so you can kind of use that in any VST along with the sampler in FL Studio. The next part is the LFO section of Serum. So this pretty much allows you to control any other parameter. You can link it to pretty much anything and then have that be automated and have it wobbly or whatever you want. So in the LFO, there's 3 main modes: trigger, which allows you to start the LFO when a new note is pressed; envelope, which allows you to do the same thing, but then after that it behaves like a normal envelope; and then off, which doesn't behave when a note is played. The next parameters are BPM, which allows you to change the rate from BPM or bar, and then when you click it off, everything changes into hertz. Anchor allows you to sync the start of the LFO when the BPM parameter is selected. And then finally, there is triplet and dotted. So when you click these on, when you go into the rate, you can see that there's now dotted values and then triplet values. Next in the LFO section is the rise and delay knobs, which are only affected when the trigger mode is selected, but these control both the rise and the delay of the LFO after it's done done being played. And then the final knob in the LFO section is the smoothing knob, which just allows you to smooth out the output that the LFO gives. For the next section, we have the velocity and note section, and this allows you to control all of the parameters in Serum based on either velocity or the note being played, so you can get some pretty interesting things with this as well. And then finally in Serum, we have the filter section, which just allows you to filter out your sound and change how it sounds. But the nice thing about this filter is you can select which parameters it's affecting. So you can see here that I have A selected, so only oscillator A is being filtered out and B is completely unfiltered. N and S stand for noise and sub, so you could also filter out the noise or the sub oscillator if you wanted to. And then the final thing I wanted to mention is the portamento knob, which allows you to have glidey notes like you hear in a lot of leads. And then the next page we're going to focus on is the effects page, but I'm not really going to go too in depth on each of the effects just for time's sake. But overall, these are just your normal standard effects, and they behave just like a normal effect would in the FL mixer. So for this video, we're going to go ahead and make a sine pluck, and then we're also going to break down a super layered pad that I used a bunch of guitar pedal stuff for. So to start off with this sine pluck, we're going to want to go ahead and go to oscillator A, click here on default, go to analog, and then go ahead and go to basic shapes. Now we can see we have a sine wave, so if I click on this, you'll see it's a sine wave, but we can also use the wavetable positions to change the way the wave is. But we want to keep it at a sine wave because that's really what we're going for. So for the starting sound, here's what it sounds like. So you can see that isn't very plucky, so we're going to want to go down here to the envelope and adjust it to make it a pluck. So we might want to bring up the attack just a touch so it isn't so clicky. So now we've kind of lost that click at the beginning, which is nice. And then I'm just going to adjust this a little further to kind of just get it the way I want. So that sounds pretty nice, and it's a great place to start at. So next we're going to want to go back into oscillator A, and we're going to mess with the unison. So I'm going to turn this up to 4 and then see how that sounds. So you can see it's super detuned, but it did get a little bit more wider. So we're going to want to go ahead and turn down the detune a little bit. So now it still has some of that wide effect, but it's a little bit more normal sounding. And then we can also turn up the blend just a touch. So that right there is a super simple pluck, and it would probably work for some melodies, but we want to make it sound a little bit better before we run it through the guitar pedals. So I'm going to go into the FX and then just grab a reverb, switch it to plate, and then turn the mix down a decent percent. And then we're going to up the width just a little bit. So it's really simple, but it does make the sound feel a little bit more full. So now that we have that reverb added, I just want to make the pluck a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and click on oscillator B and then go back to analog, basic shapes, and grab another sine wave. And I think I want to put this one up an octave or two. So you can now see that's super aggressive and plucky. But again, I'm going to turn up the unison to, let's go 8 this time, turn down the detune, turn up the blend. And then we can go ahead and declick A on the filter, and I just have the MG low 12 selected, and then we're going to only filter out B, which is the one that's up an octave. So now I'm going to go ahead and make the filter move with the LFO. So I'm just going to go to LFO 1 and then just drag it over to the cutoff. So now we can adjust this, and I'm going to go ahead and set the LFO to envelope mode. So I'm just going to click there. So we can see how this sounds. So I think I just want it to go up so that the high pitched noise will slowly fade in and get heard as the pluck goes on. So that's kind of what I'm going for, but I do want to make it a little bit faster. So if I go ahead and put that up too, maybe lower the level on this so it's super just like in the background. So now that we have that kind of filter sweep on the second oscillator, the pluck is pretty much good. But I think I might add some more effects. So I'm going to go ahead and add some hyper and dimension. So I'm just going to turn the mix up just a little bit and then turn the size up on the dimension and the mix up as well. And then we can go ahead and connect LFO1 to the dimension mix knob. So you can see here we have the same thing and it's connected to the same envelope LFO. So now as that reverse comes in, then everything after that will have the dimension on it. So now that's sounding a little bit more interesting. So then the final thing I want to do is delay, but I actually won't keep this for the final sound. I just want to see how it sounds with it. So I'm going to go ahead and link this and then move this to 1/2. Turn this to ping pong and then adjust the EQ so the delay is a little bit different from the normal sound. Actually, maybe we'll go make this a little bit faster. So that's going to be pretty much it for this sound. So here's how it sounds after all the effects are on it and the delay and all the oscillators are altered and everything. So it's a super simple sine pluck that's kind of similar to the rewind pluck, but this will work in a bunch of kind of melodies. So since we're going to add guitar pedal effects and make this a one shot, I'm actually going to go ahead and turn off the delay because one shots with delay always kind of sound weird to me. So now that we have that delay turned off, we're going to go ahead and route this to 1 on the mixer and then add in our guitar pedals in here. So if you're wondering how to set your guitar pedals up, I have a full video on that, so you should definitely go check that out. We're just going to go with input 8 and then output 3 and 4. So now we can go down here to the mood and unbypass this. And I think I want to use the slip function, so I'm going to go with that. So I think I just want a super high pitched buzz. So if I go here, turn the clock all the way up only on this side, maybe lower it just a touch. So that's a nice little like delay to it, but it's not too much where it'll sound weird when it is in one shot form. So now we're going to add in the micro looping section of the pedal. So we have to let the sound play and then click it because it records what it just heard. So now we can turn the mix down a little bit. So now we have this super interesting sparkle and texture on this one shot. So now we can go up in here into Edison and record it in. So I'm just going to go here and then click play. And then we can go ahead and bypass the pedals so we don't hear that effect anymore. So now we have to go click this button here to put it into the playlist. So now we can see we have all of those takes in. So I really like this second take and I thought it kind of hit the hardest. So we're going to go just kind of section that out and then zoom in here and then make sure this is starting on time. So we're just going to grab that and I'm holding Alt so it's off the grid and you can get a more exact chop of when the one shot is starting. So we're going to want to cut this tail right here and I'm just going to make it this long because it doesn't really matter since it's a pluck. And then we're going to go ahead and just select this and then record it. And to record on the mixer, I just select the master channel and then did Alt R and then I have this now. And the reason why I recorded it there is because there was 3 takes on this. So I wanted the one shot just to contain the one take that we liked. So now since we added that texture, if we listen to the end here, the texture goes all the way to the end. So I kind of want to fade that out so it's a little bit nicer sounding. So I'm just going to bring this out knob up. So now we can go ahead and make this one shot a little bit more unique. So I'm going to route the one shot to 5 on the mixer and then just add a little touch of reverb just to make it sound a little bit better. And then we're going to go to an EQ because I feel like there's a lot of lows in this pluck and we're just going to kind of bring down around 300 because that's where it tends to get muddy in melodies. And then we'll bring up the highs a little bit. And then to take it one step further, we're going to go ahead and make this unique and then reverse this. So then since we have that out knob turned up, we can go ahead and get rid of that. And then I want a little reverse chop right about here. So we just have to zoom in, make sure this is roughly on time, and then grab that tail. So then I want to route the reverse section to 6 on the mixer track. And then I think I'm just going to add some kind of old telephone EQ. So I just go click on that in the EQ, make it a little bit bigger so it gets some of the lows. Do something like that. So that just kind of sits in the background. It isn't super overbearing. And then again, we can add some reverb on that so it can kind of fade out. And then if you listen to this really closely, we can hear that we have a click right here. So to kind of minimize that, we're just going to click here, go to declicking mode and use smooth. Then we can go in and just kind of bring this back just a little bit. So it kind of does more of a fade out and it won't click. So then the final step is I usually like to normalize both of the one shots. So we're just going to go normalize these and then bring the volume down. just so it's a little bit louder. And then we can go back into the mixer and record it. So after that, here's what the final one shot is sounding like. So it's a super simple sine pluck with a little bit of interesting texture and a little reverse bit. But how you go about saving this is you don't want to go up here to file and save as, and then just save as a WAV file wherever you keep your one shots. What you have to do is double click on it and open the sampler, do Control E to open Edison. Then the first thing you want to do is remove looping points. So just right click and then click delete. Looping points aren't necessarily a bad thing, but in one shots, sometimes they get really annoying for me. So I like to always remove them so other people don't have to deal with it. And then the last thing we have to do is click here and then detect pitch regions. So then we can go ahead and see if we actually are in tune at C. So if we go ahead and look at all the flags, you can see it's C5 all the way through. So we're good. And then we can go ahead and delete those points and then go up here to save and then save sample as. And then you can just save this in whatever kit you're working on or wherever you keep your one shots. And I highly recommend if you are working on a one shot kit to have a separate folder called testing so you can actually do thorough testing to make sure if your one shots actually sound good when they're played out in the piano roll. So now we can go ahead and drag that one shot in from the browser. And then all we have to do is check if looping points are active so you can see it's grayed out, so that's good. And then everything we know is in tune, so overall this is a solid one shot. We just have to see how it sounds when it's actually played out. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the normal hold only on the envelope and then see if this actually sounds good in a pattern. So overall, I listened to that MIDI through a couple times and it's a decent one shot. It's not great, but it still is a one shot that would work in a melody. I would probably use it more as an accent pluck rather than for a main melody, but overall, pretty solid one shot. So for the next part of the video, I want to go over how you can actually use these one shots in Serum to create different presets that are a little bit more unique and interesting sounding. So if we go back into the mixer, back to where we recorded the guitar pedals, we can go ahead and delve into one of the most interesting things about the mood, which is the texture. So we're just going to go ahead and create its super interesting texture and not have the sound playing, and then we're going to record that in. We're going to end up using this in the noise oscillator in Serum, so then we can have guitar pedal textures with a synth sound. So this is just a super simple texture that'll work great for the noise oscillator in Serum, but I think I actually do want to have the sound playing and then edit it further in the blooper. So I'm just going to go ahead and record it into the blooper. So now we have that texture even more altered with the blooper. We can go ahead and put it back into the playlist like we would a normal one shot. So actually I accidentally did this twice. We're just going to go over here and then cut off this tail because I think that will be a good section enough to use the noise filter with. And then I'm just going to go ahead and route this to mixer channel 7 because I don't think that's used. And then I just want to put probably an old telephone EQ on it. So now that we have that more figured out and filtered out, we can go ahead and record this like any other one shot. So we're just gonna go Alt-R on the mixer, record that in. Now we have the new version here. Again, like the last thing, Alt-E, delete the loop point, but this doesn't really matter if it's in pitch. So we're gonna go here, save sample as. And then if I go ahead and bring over the browser, how you wanna save this in the Serum noise folder is go into your documents, Xfer, Serum presets, noises, and then just make a folder for your noises. So I have one here that's called my noises, and then you just want to go ahead and save it in here. So you can see I have one that's mood plus blooper and then just a mood texture. So now that we have that saved, we can actually go ahead into a new version of Serum, click on the noise filter, go to whatever folder you put that in, and I did mood plus blooper 2, so that's the one we just did. So if I go ahead and blast the level, you can just see now that we have that guitar pedal texture in Serum. And then another thing you can do using one-shots is actually just grab the one-shot and drag it into the oscillator, and it'll create a wavetable from that. So if I go ahead and look at this, you can see that's what the sound actually looks like. So we can go ahead and do an automation on the LFO, maybe change it to 4 bars. So now if we play this, it's not the best sounding because you would have to alter it a lot, but it is a way to get really super interesting presets. And then using those two things I just mentioned, you can make super interesting things like this. So if we actually go ahead and look at the sound, if we turn off oscillator A, this oscillator B is from dragging a one shot into the oscillator and then automating the wavetable. So you can see it's doing the same kind of thing. And again, I have the rate on 4 bars, but I have it selected on off and not trigger. And then again, like I just showed, I have the noise oscillator on a mood and blooper texture. So these two together sound really high pitched alone, but it does add a really super cool texture to the Serum preset. And then you can go ahead and add back in the main sound of the preset. It just overall creates a super interesting texture on top of an already alright sound. And then here's another variation of that same technique. So oscillator A is just a one shot, and I just went ahead and chose a wavetable position, and I don't have it automated. So I just kind of scrolled through till I found something I like. And then again, the noise oscillator is a mood texture. So overall, just kind of like repurposing your one shots and adding guitar pedal effects to them and then putting them back in Serum. It's just a really cool thing to get super unique presets that sound really good. And then before I go ahead and end the video, I do want to show some more examples of what you can get when you design something in Serum and then add one shot textures to it. So yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for the video. Thank you guys for watching and have a great rest of your night. I hope you guys learned something because I find this stuff really interesting, and I'm definitely going to make some more guitar pedal centered sound design videos in the future because I think I'm just like scratching the surface of this and there's a ton more potential, especially when you add dip switches into the equation. But anyways, that's pretty much it for this video. Again, I hope you learned something. Bye.